In a previous video, I noted that the old Section 59 supported parental authority when it said parents are justified in using force by way of correction if the force used is reasonable in the circumstances. By contrast, the new Section 59 removed parental authority by saying nothing justifies the use of force for the purpose of correction. Why the change? What was behind the writing of these two laws such that they say totally opposite things? To answer, we need some basic philosophy. Okay, I know philosophy is not everyone's cup of tea, but even if you're such a person, you have a philosophy of life, a worldview, whether you're aware of it or not. So to start, let's ask, what is a child and what is the nature of children such that one law says correction of them is necessary and endorses parental authority in correction, while the other law strips parents of this authority and says children must not be corrected? Children are a temporary subset of the more general category of human beings. So we need to ask more general questions. What is a human being, and how did they come by whatever nature they have? In a nutshell, the view that rules in New Zealand at present is that humans are chance products of a mindless universe. This view says that the universe made itself by exploding into existence from nothing, with no cause and for no reason. Then, after evolving through evolutionary processes for around 14 billion years, these unguided processes produced human beings. Our immediate ancestors were some ape-like critters, but back about 1 billion years they were warmed over pond scum produced by chance electrochemical events. In brief, something came from nothing by itself, life arose from non-life, spontaneous generation, genetic information and consciousness came from chemicals, thought came from non-thought, and any morals come from matter. Richard Dawkins, an advocate of this view, said, "The universe we observe has precisely the properties we should expect if there is, at bottom, no design, no purpose, no evil and no good, nothing but blind, pitiless indifference." William Provine, Professor of Evolutionary Biology at Cornell University, said,
"Let me summarize my views on what modern evolutionary biology tells us loud and clear, and I must say that these are basically Darwin's views. There are no gods, no purposive forces of any kind, no life after death. When I die, I am absolutely certain that I'm going to be completely dead. That's just all, that's going to be the end of me. There's no ultimate foundation for ethics, no ultimate meaning in life, and no free will for humans either."
A number of years ago, two icons of New Zealand's secular society who hold this view, Dr. Brian Edwards and Professor Lloyd Gearing, had a debate. In an Evening Post interview, staff writer David Cohen asked Gearing, "Who would you rate as your most formidable debating foe, Brian Edwards?" Well, I suppose he could be," he replied with a doleful blink at the memory of the renowned Wellington broadcaster with whom he clashed on a television debate some years ago. Dr. Edwards, himself an atheist, accused Professor Gearing of actually agreeing with him on all matters of doctrine. He continued, "What I found disappointing about him was that I tried to listen to what he said, whereas he had his mind made up. But you and he are in fundamental agreement, surely. Yes, we agree there's no God being out there, but he thinks there's no meaning at all. I say that we, as humans, can create meaning." Now, I've got no reason to doubt the accuracy of this description of Edwards' view, and haven't heard anything to suggest Edwards has changed it since that interview was published. Gearing's a dreamer, a gutless, soft, fluffy atheist, whistling in the dark, unable to live with the logic of his atheism. He'll be dead shortly, as will Edwards, and in fact all of us. And in a couple of billion years, according to this view, all lights will go out in the heat death of the universe, and it'll be as though we had never existed. So how does Gearing's view differ from that of Edwards at the end of the day? Brian's braver. He's the hard-nosed atheist who acknowledges the dark and spelt out the logic of his atheism. Trouble is, he's inconsistent also. His atheistic religious doctrine denies meaning, and yet he lives as though life and morals have meaning. So he recently wrote words which have meaning on his blog and passed supposedly meaningful moral judgments against those who favour parents correcting their kids. Brian, if there ain't no meaning, a claim by the way that's self-refuting, why should we bother with what you say or hear your moral pronouncements as anything more than static? If there's no meaning, and thus no morals, then there's not only no need for correction, correction itself is meaningless. The majority of New Zealand's culture and institutions were built on a very different worldview, one which says that life, the universe and everything is the product of thought, of a creator, who made things for a purpose, and who made humans unique in all the creation, moral beings with a likeness to himself. Thus it's not surprising humans live every moment of every day in terms of meaning and morality. It's exactly what you'd expect. This view still forms the assumptions of most Kiwis, even if they're not personally committed to it, or may even be strenuously opposed to it. Exercising their moral capacity early in our history, our ancestors rejected the Maker and his law and chose to live their lives in rejection of his authority. This led to the universal human condition, attested to by all history, that humans are a confusing mix of greatness, kindness and creativity, goodness on one hand, and selfishness, cruelty, tyranny and depravity, evil on the other, a mix of the image of God and human rebellion. Human history to the present has been dominated by war, oppression and slavery, by brutality and the inhumanity of man to his fellows, by pride, arrogance, folly, lying, spite and hatred. It's everywhere, including within us. In this second view, both law and authority have genuine place because the Creator is the ultimate authority who's built his creation to operate on the basis of law, both natural and moral. He's made humans to operate under him within limited spheres of rule. Thus we have individual self-government, family, civil, business and church governments, etc. Each sphere of authority is limited in its jurisdiction, and its authority illegitimate if exercised outside its boundaries. Within this view, no human government has, or should ever have, total authority. Rather, multiple limited spheres of authority should all operate independent from and balancing each other, though in cooperation. By contrast, the first view, through having no higher law establishing what is universally right and wrong, nor providing a brake on human aspirations to power and control, has historically produced totalitarian governing systems where all authority is located in the state. For example, the last 100 years has seen a proliferation of totalitarian socialist regimes which all promised heaven on earth but predictably produced hell instead. All these were built on precisely the same worldview which dominates in New Zealand at present. Advocates of such regimes seek to pit classes of people against each other, remove authority from individuals and voluntary associations and located in the state, and through regulation seek to have state planning control all aspects of society. Despite socialism's appalling track record, many in New Zealand seek to bring about such a society, where individual freedom and separate independent spheres of authority are removed and brought under state, even under UN control. One strategy to this end is to encourage in various ways the breakdown of society, so states have justification to expand their control. What better way to achieve this breakdown than to require children to grow up uncorrected? Thus the recent successful move to strip New Zealand parents of authority. Children are exploited for political ends as a class oppressed by their parents, with the state promoted as the beneficent saviour and protector of children from parental oppression. Now, which of these two views of human beings more accurately describes the reality we find ourselves to be? Does it make sense to assert, as Brian Edwards does, that nothing, including good and evil, has meaning, when every moment of every day we all live our lives as though it does? The existence of the police, justice and corrections departments, all of which are authorised to use reasonable force towards adults for corrective purposes, presuppose that evil does exist and that such evil in adults should be suppressed. But what about children? Are they paragons of virtue, little angels incapable of wrong? Or are they afflicted with the same nature as us adults, such that they at times need correction and their behaviour changed? It's not rocket science to see that kids have the same tendency to evil as adults, and recently this was unintentionally acknowledged through a national conference being held on bullying in schools. Historically, parents in New Zealand have been understood to have the God-given responsibility and freedom to raise their children to be mature, self-disciplined and productive adults, who build and enhance their wider community rather than become a drain on it or destroy it. This means that as children grow and at times express their flawed nature through disobedience, dishonesty, disrespect and destructiveness, it's the parents' judicial responsibility to suppress this behaviour by correcting it, nipping it in the bud when minor so it's not repeated and doesn't persist to the point where it becomes major and the police, justice and correction departments are required to deal with it. It's this parental authority which Parliament stripped from parents. It's this parental authority which needs to be restored. Parliament should repeal the present Section 59 and reinstate the previous one.